Peppa Pig is such a huge phenomenon that for over 20 years, it has charmed generations of all ages. But did you know that even after 300 episodes and 6 Christmas specials, the pink piglet is still 5 years old?
Wow!
If time really passed in Peppa Pig, the first big shock would definitely be seeing our little piglet, her best friend Susie, George, and the other main characters getting older. Just imagine, Peppa's brother trading his dinosaur toys for dinosaur video games, or Peppa stopping her muddy puddle jumps to start swimming in muddy pools. Some things never change, but when you grow up, you can take everything to a more mature level. We could even have a special episode where Peppa finally turns 14 years old and realizes she's now too grown up for certain childish activities. She'd probably start focusing on typical teenage interests like makeup, crushes, and going to teen band concerts. Could there be a pop star in Peppa's world? On the adult side of things, Mommy and Daddy Pig would get older and become seniors. Daddy Pig might retire, buy a boat, and spend his days fishing and jumping in muddy puddles, something he's always loved. And what about you? What would you do? I'd definitely get ready to see all the changes in Peppa's world if time moved forward, starting right now, because another episode of Cinewave is about to begin. As time passed, it would be inevitable for the creators of the series to change the character designs. Peppa has been on air for over 300 episodes since 2004. How old were you back then? Maybe you weren't even born yet, right? But if time passed, we'd see a much older Peppa, as tall as Mommy Pig, and George would have grown into a full-fledged young boy. Peppa would likely have new clothes, something trendier. Maybe some jeans and a cool shirt, or if she's still into dresses, I've heard girls love pairing them with those stylish all-star shoes because they're super trendy. Would Peppa want to wear big earrings? Maybe even a temporary tattoo? George would definitely get a dinosaur tattoo. Now this might shock you, but since Peppa Pig is a children's show, it's likely that the series would change its protagonist. Can you imagine a world where Peppa isn't the main character? It could actually happen. Of course, if time really passed, a new character would take her place because younger viewers would need someone they can relate to. We think this new protagonist might be the youngest member of the Pig family. Not George, but baby Alexander, Peppa's cousin. He'd be the perfect choice, since with Peppa all grown up, he'd still be a young piglet, keeping the fun adventures everyone knows and loves, but reflecting the mindset of today's kids. Let's not forget that our beloved Piglet would already be in her 20s by then. Besides, the former main character could serve as inspiration for him. New friends might also join the show. What do you think? Would you watch a cartoon called Alex Pig? As Peppa grows up, more mature topics would start appearing in the storyline. Peppa Pig fans are ready for this because if you're a fan of the channel, you know that kids' cartoons can be serious too. Just look at Bluey. In Peppa's world, there's one issue that definitely needs addressing. The possible crimes Mr. Fox has been committing for quite a while. His shop selling items of questionable origin needs to be shut down, and he must return all the things he's been borrowing without permission. Everyone knows that Freddy Fox dreams of becoming a police officer, and if that happens, which is likely his future, then Mr. Fox might end up arrested by his own son, or perhaps turn over a new leaf. In the future, Freddy will probably want to deal with this problem, and the show's creators will need to develop his character if he's serious about becoming a law enforcement officer. Mr. Fox's arrest could make for a compelling episode that teaches what's right and wrong, showing kids that stealing isn't worth it. And what about you? Would you arrest Mr. Fox? Comment with #prison so we can know. While some characters might not fare so well, others are definitely going to thrive, and one of them is Edmund Elephant. He has a brilliant future in science and will probably be the one to introduce a lot of technology to Peppa's world. He'll work on groundbreaking inventions like a rocket to reach the moon faster, or even a solution to change how everything in Peppa's town is far away and perched on top of hills. Maybe a network of cable cars connecting all the buildings, or a super fast train for the town's residents. We bet he'll invent a flying car to show that the future has arrived. These kinds of advancements with digital machines are crucial to making sure viewers understand that time has moved forward. Using Bluey as an example, the end of Season 3 demonstrated a time shift through the delivery drones that appeared in the final episode. Edmund could invent something similar for Peppa's world. For little Edmund Elephant to learn how to build those machines, he's going to need to study, and if time really passed, we'd see all the little ones heading off to college. Madame Gazelle might be the teacher for everyone in town, but it's impossible for her to follow them into adulthood. We theorize that her sisters, the Rockin' Gazelles, could be professors at other schools, like universities. This also raises an interesting question. If everyone studies together in the same school and there's only one teacher, would they all have the same classes when they go to college? Maybe that's one of the reasons time doesn't pass, because splitting up Peppa's class would be unacceptable. As Peppa herself says in the episode Future, she dreams of having a big house where she can live with all of her friends. Speaking of the Future episode, it makes it pretty clear that Peppa will marry Pedro Pony, but before the ceremony, we need to see their relationship develop, maybe even their first kiss. Well, besides the one Peppa gave him on the cheek during the school play. If there was already a special moment for Mrs. Cow's wedding to Mr. Bull, imagine how grand the event would be for our beloved little pig. Of course, for this to happen, the characters would need to grow up, which is only possible if time truly moves forward in the show. That's why we believe time in Peppa's world is almost frozen. We say almost because if it were completely still, there wouldn't be new births, like baby Alexander. Regardless, all these events should have happened by now. Susie Sheep would definitely be Peppa's maid of honor, alongside Danny Dog, and Daddy Pig would cry with joy as he walks his daughter down the aisle. Don't the creators realize that we want episodes like this? What do you think? As time passes and the characters grow up, they'll take on responsibilities, not just fun. Peppa needs to pick a career soon. We already know George will likely become some kind of archaeologist, just like Bandit and Bluey. Could he bump into Bingo during one of his expeditions? That pup is also destined to follow the same career path. As for the world's favorite pink pig, she might choose a radical profession like professional mud jumping, an athlete. But this can only happen if time moves forward. While the sports are great for all ages, some competitions are only for grown-ups. Have you ever played in a mud fight? To make sure we don't throw you into the mud, you'd better subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. One of the main reasons time doesn't move forward in Peppa's world is to protect the beloved grandparents. If Peppa and her friends were to grow up, then the parents would become the new elders, and in this case, characters like Grandpa Pig would have to say goodbye. It's tough to hear, but that's the circle of life. The older ones must leave, leaving behind fond memories in our hearts. Mummy Pig would miss him dearly. Perhaps Peppa's family could move into the now empty house, as someone would need to take care of Granny Pig's chickens. But life would also be renewed. The arrival of little ones would be a beautiful way to show the growth of the characters. Peppa Pig is a magical children's show, so if Peppa were to marry Pedro, there'd be no problem with her having little piglets or ponies. Does that not make sense to you? Well, talking potatoes are totally normal, right? Sure. Anyway, if time passed, Peppa would probably end up having children. Susie would too, after marrying Danny. In the real world, rabbits have lots of babies, so we could expect an army of bunnies as Rebecca's kids. Is this why time is frozen? To prevent overpopulation? Maybe that's how Mrs. Rabbit manages to handle so many jobs. She might even control time itself. One of the biggest mysteries in Peppa's world is what the adults' names really are. Daddy Pig isn't actually called Daddy, but there's a rule in Peppa's world. When kids grow up, they lose their names. If Peppa were to grow up, she'd stop being Peppa and become Mrs. Pig. A moment proving this happens in the episode Sea Treasure, where George finds a glass bottle signed by Reggie Rabbit. They discover that this character is actually Grandpa Rabbit, whose real name is Reggie. So if time moved forward in Peppa's world, she might lose her name because no one would call her that anymore. One thing is absolutely certain. When time moves forward, it'll confirm that Madame Gazelle is a vampire. If she really wants to keep her secret, she'll have to move to another town. It wouldn't make sense for the grandparents to say goodbye while she stays perfectly fine, as if time doesn't affect her. So if there's one character who needs to be cautious about the passage of time, it's definitely the vampiress who takes care of the little ones. Focusing back on the characters growing up, one thing the production would have to address is the change in the characters' voices to sound more adult. Over the 20 years of Peppa Pig, Peppa has already had 5 voice actresses, but with her growing older, she couldn't keep the voice of a 4-year-old girl anymore. The creators would need to bring in an adult woman's voice for the character. And you? Would you get used to Peppa's new voice actress? If time passed, not only would the city change with more technology, but it might become an entirely new setting. We think Peppa and George wouldn't want to live in that village anymore. Everything is far away, and they live isolated. Most likely, we'd get a new setting with tall buildings and busy avenues. The passage of time would bring new interest to the characters, and the big city would certainly offer Peppa and her friends a fresh experience. Now, to keep your experience with the channel going and stay here with us, we've picked out 2 more videos for you to watch. Who knows, you might not even notice the time passing. See you in the next video!